Dude, I am going to tell you that for some reason it was not recording. I just realized. I cannot
God, it was
believe
such
it.
a good. It was such a
God,
good.
it was such a good intro.
I was so good.
I just looked up and I went, why is the time code not going?
Welcome to the Film Riot Podcast. Today on the show, we have a very good friend of mine, Seth Worley. Seth and I have been friends for years, and we're kind of two sides of the same coin. So I thought it would be really interesting to dive into sort of a conversation about where we're at in our careers. It's a place that you don't really hear a lot of people talking about because it's a place of a lot of uncertainty and, just trying to figure it out. So I thought it might be interesting and hopefully useful to some people to hear about some of the stuff we're talking about today, which is getting representation, really starting to get your first foot in the door of sort of the Hollywood system and trying to get a first feature made. So we're going to be talking about all of that. But before we get into that, I want to thank our sponsors like Aperture. Aperture is such a great company. We've talked about them on the show a bunch and on Film Riot a bunch. I use their gear all the time. And as much as I love the gear, I love the people behind it and their philosophy. It's very similar to what Film Riot's all about, which is how to get really high quality without that high price. And they've done that with all of their gear, their lights and their film gear. You get really high quality stuff without getting those insane prices you can get with some stuff. So definitely jump over to the episode page for this episode. We put links in there, including reviews to some of the lights. We're going to do reviews of one of their new lights coming up pretty soon. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I also want to thank Updesk. The Updesk home desk has the kind of aesthetic that you would really dig. It's got that great look without the expensive price tag, similar to Aperture. It's 60 inches long, 30 inches wide. It's a desktop featuring a premium high pressure laminated surface with all black wood grain finish. You can move your entire workspace up and down with a single press of a button. So there's no more excuses to sitting all day. You could start standing while you work and live a much better lifestyle. Again, I have info for all of this over on our episode page. So definitely jump over there and check out links to both of our sponsors. But now I'm going to shut up about all of that and get into it with Seth. I don't want to get into your superhero origin story, because I think most people know, how you got your start, where you started. The same as me, like we have very similar audiences. So anybody listening already knows you and your work. So what I really wanted to dive into was a conversation around the fact that both of us are in very similar places in our careers. You're a little further than I am, especially the fact that you're in LA and I'm not. And we both came from very, very similar places, getting our start in very similar ways. You have representation now. I'm about to get it. And that happened in sort of similar ways. So I just wanted to kind of talk about where we're at in the process, where we're both very much on the verge. We're so close to making that first feature or first series. It's like you can almost smell it. You can almost taste it. So I just wanted to kind of start talking about that a little bit. I guess starting with, how did you get your representation?
Funny, you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about your origin story. How'd you get your representation? Well, I got it in 2011 when I made Plot Device. It was a short film that I made, my first Red Giant short, back in 2011. And 2011 was an interesting time. That was back then you could make a short film and have a chance at directing the next Thor movie. It was like, things weren't as saturated as they are now on YouTube and Vimeo with narrative shorts and like proof of concepts and big VFX pieces. And fortunately, there's a lot more of that now. And like I say fortunately, because God, bring on the content. It's all awesome. Like so much of it is so awesome. But that doesn't happen so much anymore. But back then you could make I made a short for Red Giant called Plot Device, and it went viral, as they say, and suddenly I had phone calls from agents and managers and producers, and at the time I was still in Nashville. I had no connections to the industry out here in LA whatsoever. And just like that, I was flying out for meetings at it was ICM, UTA, WME. I think those are the main agencies I met with, and then there were various managers that I met with that weekend. I just focused on reps and then trying to find a representation so then I could come back out and meet with producers. And, at the time, it was all about heat. Plot Device had given me more heat than I had ever gotten in my life and have had and still have ever had up to this point. And so because I had all this heat, I was able to, these meetings came to me, which is just unreal and unheard of.
Yeah.
And, so, I don't want to dive in. I mean, we'll get to it, but it's a very interesting process trying to like find someone to be kind of your partner in this industry, like in a weekend, like meeting all these people fresh. It was kind of a little bit like, being on The Bachelor if The Bachelor
Yeah.
lasted, one weekend. And
It's zero courtship.
yeah, it was weird.
It's
but,
the dating game versus The Bachelor.
Yeah, and does the dating game require, like, have you married at the end? Like, I think the dating game just has you in on a date. This
All right,
is just
dating
like,
game
literally,
with forced marriage.
let's spend the rest of this podcast. We have time figuring out what the exact reality television equivalent of it is. But no, I mean, so that's how I got an agent. And yeah, so I'll answer your questions. It's so easy for me to like diverge into all kinds of stuff that we will eventually get to. But to answer your question, that's how I got my agent.
And how did you? This actually might be something that you'll want to skip over, but I'll ask it, and then you can decide to skip over it or not. How did you decide what agent to go with if you were meeting with different people?
No, I'll be totally honest. So I met at all these agencies, and they were all really, really great people that were reaching out to me, and really great people with really great reputations. It was interesting because I had agents and managers reaching out, and I had producers as well. And one of those producers specifically kind of said, "Hey, I've worked at the other agencies." He was actually not a producer; he was an assistant, and he was just a huge fan and was like, "I love this short, and I've seen some of your other work, and I love it. I've worked at the other agencies with several of the agencies before, and I'm like, I might know a lot of these guys, and I'm here if you need anybody to tell you kind of who might be more of a douche and who might not be." And obviously I was like, yes, please tell me everything. And fortunately, all the guys that I was meeting with had really good reputations. So I wasn't meeting with any real sleaze bags or anything. So I don't want to give that impression. But I went with ICM because I went to WME and UTA, and both those places at the time of my meetings, whether or not was a valid assessment on my part, I just, whatever place I was in, I felt intimidated. Like the whole process was incredibly intimidating. And going into ICM, I don't know, it hit me at just the right time of the day or something about it. Like it was the least intimidating. And maybe that's not the best reason to, best like decision-making, process to use when picking business partners or picking for big decisions like this, but I don't know. It's all I had to go off of at the time, and yeah. So that's kind of
yeah. I mean,
it
makes a lot of sense because it is like that little marriage that you're diving into, and I mean, if they all had the same sort.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and by the way, it should be totally stated here that like any wisdom I'm gonna share in this area is completely unreliable because I have yet to officially sell anything in this town. I have yet to I am not like Dan Trachtenberg would be a much better person to talk to for like.
But that's what I think is interesting and why I wanted to talk to you about all this is because, like I said, we're both in a similar place, and it's in a place where we're trying to make it happen. And it's in a place to where, I wish there was somebody telling me all this stuff in this place, not having had made it happen and looking back in hindsight and all that, but being in the thick of it and trying to figure it out and just being honest about that.
Yeah, if nothing else, it kind of can provide anyone out there listening just stuff that like you and I kind of isn't out there for the two of us and hasn't been out there really for the two of us of just like, these are the things you might feel. So then when you feel them, it's normal.
Yeah.
And you can
I mean, everybody that I've talked to says pretty much the same thing too. So it seems pretty universal regardless of level.
All right. Yeah. So we can get that disclaimer out of the way and let's just start trash talking half this town. So
okay, let's do it.
I'm kidding. Half this town, as if I know anything close to that many people here. No, the interesting thing about being in the center of all this, so when it happened, when Plot Device happened, this is great. When Plot Device happened and I started getting all these phone calls, Stu Mashowitz, he created Magic Bullet. He's the chief creative officer at Red Giant. He has an extensive visual effects background, an amazing blog called proloss.com, and he's become a close friend and very much somewhat of a big brother to me over the past several years. So Aaron Rabinowitz connected me with Stu. He called Stu. Aaron Rabinowitz is the director of marketing at Red Giant who hired me for Plot Device, and he called Stu after I was getting all these calls and was like, hey, I think Seth might be getting a little overwhelmed by a lot of the industry stuff like that's going on. Like it might be a cool opportunity for you to reach out and kind of like give him any wisdom or advice you have. And Stu was incredibly generous and called me up, and we had a great conversation. And Stu is just kind of a walking pile of wisdom, a walking pile of like very specific kinds of wisdom and very specific like Stu outlooks on it that you wouldn't have thought of. And one of the things he said was that agents are heat-seeking missiles. They go where the heat is, and they do not generate that heat. A lot of people misunderstand and think that by getting an agent, that's going to be the key that's unlocking a gate and letting you into the industry. And it's not.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the right analogy or metaphor is for what they are, besides heat-seeking missiles, is that they follow where the heat is, and it's still going to be up to you to generate that heat. And I guess when he told me that, it made me realize, like, it validated an instinct in me that, honestly, I don't know if this was the right approach or not. It was just my approach, which was I did not want to... I'm the kid who, at a birthday party, when the piñata busts, I like take my time and I just stand there and see where the piles of candy that nobody is going for are, and I calmly, almost like a robot or a serial killer, just calmly walk up and step down and pick the candy up, and that's my candy. I did not have to jump in and fight people for it. That's just not how I'm wired. I'm not an opportunist like that.
Right.
It stresses me out to have to be that way because, like,
totally,
it's just, I knew that this heat that I had was like a wave. This is going to be so many metaphors in this, just this story alone, but that it was gonna be like a wave, and that wave was gonna crash eventually, and I would prefer to land as gracefully as I could with as many contacts and opportunities in place, like intact as possible. And so I just went out and I took meetings and I just felt it out. And if I felt comfortable with somebody and I feel like they're being real with me and they're not BSing their way through this conversation and they're not just telling me what I want to hear, and I feel like we have things in common and this is someone who I would like to, like, that I get along with and I kind of trust and could learn from, then that's a person that I want to work with. And another thing, I don't know, are you feeling that similar? Like, how are you approaching all of this?
Well, I haven't had the meetings with the agents yet, but for me, it's, getting that representation is a necessity of needing that person to help me navigate what's currently going on. Because when you do get a little bit of that heat, then it's all of a sudden a ton of things from a ton of different directions and at levels that are a little terrifying. And it's like, well, what do I do? Who do I go with? How do I, because you almost get this cheater mentality that it's like, even though each place knows that they're not the only place you're talking to, that they know you're pitching elsewhere, they know other people have come in and are probably asking for very similar things of you. I just have like a very loyal, and I know you're the same way. Like I have a very loyal, like if you, are willing to go with this with me, I'm ready to say I do and let's do this. But that's not really how it works, and that's not what's best for you or for the story you're trying to tell, by the way, because this might not be the people to tell the story you're wanting to tell the best way is
that
what I'm very much learning.
Yes, that is so huge because these people are, oh my gosh, I lost it. But yes, they are. It is so hard to be a business, like the business side of things. Like you and I don't think are wired as the kind of people who would like leverage a job offer for a raise at our current job. Like that's just not, totally. We're the kind of people who like go into our boss's office, like crying, saying, I got a job offer from this place and they're offering more money, but I want to stay here. And we like, that's me at least. But but honestly, so I'm going to name drop here because he's awesome and I am a douche. But my friend, Tony Hale, who's someone I got to know early on amidst all of this industry stuff. And he's been super, like, he's the kind of guy who, like, if you don't get a hold of him, he calls you back immediately. And he's always, like, there to, like, answer my I don't know what I'm doing questions. And, he recently, I was in a situation similar to what you're talking about where I have a feature or I have a property that I'm
pitching.
Pitching. I'm
Shopping.
Pitching. And I'm in the it's like, I don't know. I'm in the process
taking
of, like,
around.
Yeah, I'm taking it up. I'm whatever all these
begging.
words are. Yes, begging. That's what it is I'm begging, while also acting too good for everything.
Right.
Well, it's like I don't have a producing partner on the project yet, and so I'm kind of in the process still of like talking to various producers. But that's so uncomfortable for me because one, I am more afraid of making. Okay, most people have this fear I think that the big fear is that you're going to get into business with someone who is going to then fire you off the project and take your project from you and move on, and you'll have to watch it as a totally different thing down the road. And that's actually not my biggest fear. My biggest fear is just getting into business with somebody who I don't work well with, or who doesn't get any of like, just as someone who is like either difficult to work with, or who is potentially undermining my work or second guessing everything. You just doesn't see the vision or get it. And it's just so hard to like decide that this person has it from one meeting. And so you have to like shop it around to various people in various places.
Yeah.
And like if multiple agents are calling you, you meet with all of them. But there's this horrible feeling and fear of, I feel like you're two-timing everybody. Like you feel like you're cheating on everybody. And so I name dropped Tony. So I called Tony for advice on this stuff, and his advice was amazing. And he said, this just basically says that the journey is more important to you than the destination. And that's a good thing. And your impulse to be transparent and open, don't ignore that. Do it. Like, it absolutely helps you and helps everyone for you to be transparent with the various people. Like to say, hey, just so you know, I am having conversations simultaneously, or I've had a couple meetings with this other person about this, and nothing is, set in stone or moving forward. I'm still exploring that, but just want you to know, like, there's no commitments or anything, but I'm still exploring the best possible partner for this. And God, if they know what they're doing and they've been in this business and they're good at what they're doing, they will understand that, and they will not see you as a cheater. Truth be told, you could act a whole lot worse than that, and they probably still wouldn't see you as a cheater, but that's just not who we are. So yeah, I feel for you, man, because it's such a weird and confusing time.
It is, especially because logically, they all know that you're pitching around town. I mean, even when you say it in the meeting that, you have had other meetings, blah, 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 you just still feel guilty for some reason, like, because you don't owe anybody anything, obviously, but you just, for whatever reason, still feel guilty, like you're kind of two-timing.
My big fear is always just like, I'm worried that I will look like I am withholding information strategically.
Right. Yeah.
And that comes from a deep-seated fear that I'm going to accidentally, inadvertently do something terrible. Like, we all have had moments in time where we found ourselves where, oh, I totally hurt that person's feelings and did not mean to at all, and did not mean it that way whatsoever. And it's that fear of like coming off like just act by not saying something accidentally, therefore looking like I've strategically withheld information and am trying to negotiate purely selfish. It's all just paranoia. It's this internal paranoia. You're like living in your head, and you're trying to control what other people think about you every step of the way. And it's all dumb. It's all just so stupid and dumb. There are real feelings and real fears, but the actual threats that you feel and the danger you feel you're in or your project is in, you have to every day wake up and be like, this is dumb. Truth be told, whatever I'm trying to make, whatever I'm developing these people, like, chances are none of it will pan out.
Right.
This here comes to my approach to navigating show business, which is just wake up every day and assume that nothing is going to pan out. And I don't mean that in like a cynical, super pessimistic way that it sounds. I mean that in a way that you are preparing yourself not to be right, but to be wrong. You're preparing yourself to really appreciate every little development that happens, because truth be told, so many projects, so many meetings happen, and so many conversations. You leave so many meetings out here feeling super jazzed, like we're going to make this thing tomorrow, and then it just doesn't happen. And you've got to be able to enjoy those moments of like, I just had a meeting and it went well, and I didn't kill anyone. Like,
I didn't fall apart. I didn't cry. There were none of those horrible, awkward silences that often do happen.
I mean, that is a victory that will make my week, is if I will have a meeting without awkward silences, and where I will feel, oh, I looked a little bit like I knew what I was doing.
It always feels a little bit like, do you want me to start the pitch now?
Oh, okay,
am I alone in that?
No, you're not. I've been to so many like workshops or like Q&As with writers and where they even talk about pitching, and they talk about here's how to present your story. And I never do it because it just never, the time runs out. And I also have never actually asked it, because I know when it comes out of my mouth, I'm going to feel stupid and there's no way to answer it. But like, okay, cool. Thank you for telling me how to pitch it. What do you do before and after that? Like,
yes.
How do you get from, hey, nice to meet you, to it's a mystery about puppets. Like how do you?
Yeah, it always seems like for me in my experiences and all the meetings I've had recently and even before, it always seems like it just has that moment where there's like, okay, so, and you're like, oh right, so my idea.
Yeah, no matter what, it feels like you're closing your eyes and saying begin scene and action and
Yes.
starting to talk. And like Webster's dictionary defines movie as, and it is hell, that moment. So here's the thing that I've found. So this is one of the reasons I moved to LA, which is to just suck at this as much as I could so that I could possibly potentially get better at it. And pitching is like, there's a series of things on that list of things that I felt like I sucked at, and I wanted to fail as hard as I could so I could get better at them, and pitching is one of those things. I haven't gotten to do it nearly at all as much as I've wanted to, but I've gotten to do it some, and every time it gets more comfortable. And the thing that I've found is that there's kind of this general structure, just like there is to any story, there's a general structure to pitching, to these like pitch meetings. And it usually is like, welcome, hello, small talk, I'm Seth, let's latch onto any banal thing that we have in common. Yeah. And that right there is what all general meetings alone are. And I want to make sure we come back and talk about general meetings and why they are kind of the worst.
The worst.
But so the pitching, you basically, well, let's talk about general meetings and we'll come back to pitching. Is that okay? It's your podcast. I don't
I'm
know
down.
how. Okay. So thank you. You'll allow it.
Anything else you would like, Seth?
Yeah, if I could get...
Do you need a water?
There's so many things. Yes. Oh, it's a Skype.
I'll text someone in your house to bring you a water.
I'll starve. It's fine. So general meetings, if people, do you have a way you describe general meetings to people who, like your wife, like generally what they exist for?
I mean, introductions, I guess.
Yeah, it's essentially
putting face to emails.
Yes.
An assistant putting you in front of an executive.
Yeah.
That doesn't care.
Yeah. So when the ex doesn't care. Exactly. So like general meetings are, and a lot of times they do care. Like general meetings, though,
you know what
like,
I think it is? It's kind of like, are you a psychopath? I think that's what general meetings are for most of them. They want to see, are you a psychopath? Can you string a sentence together?
It's like, hey, could we make money together? And are you a psychopath? Like, and if the answer to both of those, is yes, it's negotiable.
Yeah, that's probably fine.
They're basically like little meet and greets, like blind dates, essentially, that you're set up either by your agent or by somebody else to sit and talk about, so who are you? What do you do? What's your background? And a lot of times if you're really up and coming, like so after Plot Device, the first couple general meetings were great because they were from execs and producers who saw Plot Device and got money, signs in their eyes, or just honestly, to be less cynical, like loved the short and wanted to meet me and wanted to work together. And so those first like rounds of generals that I ever had were awesome because they were people who clearly were like fans of the short. And then as you get an agent, things start to go on, and then the generals start to clearly be like, people who the agent convinced to take the meeting, and or my agent sent the short to people and they watch it. We're like, oh, well, yeah, I'll take the meeting, and you go in, and usually what happens is you get in there, you wait in the waiting room, the assistant asks if you want a water. I had read on John August's blog that you always say yes to the water or a Diet Coke or something, because then it's basically saying, yes, you're a useful person here, and keep doing your job. And so I subsequently had to pee all over LA nonstop when I was in town for all
not
these
even
meetings.
In bathrooms, just all over.
Yes,
LA.
not even in bathrooms. The point is, take the water maybe once, but don't drink
just
it.
Baby sips.
Yes.
And then store the rest of the bottle in your car.
I don't know why I would chug it. I don't know why I would drink such large quantities of it.
Just nervous beveraging.
Yeah. I love that we're not getting any information here, just talking about water. But the thing is, like, sitting in the waiting area, it usually would be about 10 minutes, which is roughly the length of Plot Device. And then they would bring me in, so it was clear like they were watching they were doing exactly what I would do, which is procrastinate on watching the short and then watch it right before the meeting. And I'd come in and meet and talk about stuff and like the thing about those meetings for me is, one, the things that I think are most interesting about me never come up in conversation. And it drives me insane. It makes me angry when I leave the meetings. Not like I don't show the anger, but I always leave being like, well, I'm just a basic white dude, like another basic white dude to put into their contacts, maybe, because we didn't touch on any of the things that I'm passionate about or excited about. And the other thing that happens is that like they ask you like, what are your favorite movies? What are the kinds of movies you want to make? And I've told this story many times before, but I forget every single movie I've ever seen in that instance, except for Twister, for some reason. And I'm not making this up. Twister it just stays in my head. Like, hey, they all went out, but they'll probably be back soon. And so it's just me and Twister here, and I'm like, okay, I'll talk about Twister, I'll vamp and wait for my brain to recalibrate, and it'll inspire me to remember all the other movies that I love. And I don't remember. I just talk about Twister. And so I
so
leave
now
general
everyone
meetings.
in Hollywood just thinks you're obsessed with Twister.
Yes, and I did this at Amblin one time with like a guy at Amblin. Like I just talked about Twister the whole time, and it's not great. It's not the most fun thing, and sometimes I like to think that maybe that in some kind of M. Night Shyamalan Signs kind of way, I'm going to find like my producing partner for life through the one meeting where they're like, oh my God, I love Twister. And we're going to, a fruitful career and partnership will become from that. But that has not happened yet.
Oh my God, I love Twister.
I know, right?
That might be a hard find.
I'm looking for.
I mean, I love Twister.
It might be a hard find. It's true.
Generals are they're just the worst, especially the ones where it's like clearly the assistant's the one that wanted to bring you in, and now they're presenting you to the executive being like, look what I found, hoping that
yes,
and then the executive's just like, and you are.
That's exactly what it is. And you are. And they're like, they're checking their email occasionally, like, or maybe they're not, but there's no way for you to like, to get up and dance and do like a song and dance and prove to them like, this is how I'm interesting. Like, trust me. But the thing is, like, I've had jobs happen from these meetings that I thought went terribly, even phone meetings, which are never good, ever.
Yeah, those are really hard.
No one's ever had a good phone meeting because usually you're talking to one or two other people. They're all in the same room together. And so they're free to look at their phones when they want. They can make faces at each other that you can't see. You're just this voice coming from a machine to them.
I've actually lucked out, and the phone meetings I have had are all just with one person, which makes it a whole lot easier.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I've done a lot of businessy conference calls unrelated to, that sort of specific thing. But with that, I've pitched on the phone and I've done generals on the phone, and it's always just with one person, which makes it so much better. But still some of them, because you're like, you can't read the body language, you can't see their facial expressions. So if they're not engaging with what you're saying, it's just like, oh God. And then the worst is every now and again, you have to go, are you still there?
Oh my gosh.
And that just makes the whole thing so yeah, I'm just listening. Oh, okay.
You're like, hey, did you hear that thing I said?
Yeah.
Did you hear that thing I said?
It was good. It was good, right? It was good.
Oh man, I think I've told you this story. I don't know if I've ever told this story in like a public setting. Maybe I have.
Go on.
One of the opportunities after Plot Device was I met an exec at Warner Brothers who was a big fan of Plot Device, super nice guy, and he invited me to pitch my take on an Acme movie, like Acme from the Looney Tunes. And this project like is still a thing. Like I think much more talented people are on board and like making it right now. But this is back in 2011, and I loved that. It was a very, very cool opportunity to me because, I'm a huge Looney Tunes fan. And I loved the idea of doing a whole movie based on just that brand and like the opportunities presented in it. So I came up with a really stupid take on it, like just really bland and generic and dumb. Because that's another thing that happens when like you start getting the ear of Hollywood is you start telling them what you think they want to hear. And does that happen to you?
It did. It hasn't been happening recently because I just got to the point where I'm just like, I mean,
stop caring.
Yeah, I just don't give a damn. It's like if I'm going to make something, I'm going to make what I want to make, and nothing has happened.
Good
yet.
for you.
Because it's like you said, you tell them what they want to hear, nothing comes of that, and you're like, well, if I'm going to do it, I might as well just do the things that I want to do.
And it's not what got you there. You didn't get there by making what you thought other people wanted to hear. You got there by making the thing that excited you. And yes, that's where I'm at now. But I didn't get that then. I still felt the pressure of like, okay, well, I need to, you're coming from a background, from a place of like, not pitching anything. I'm coming from a background of like, well, what do I have? I have a yellow button that sits on my buddy's desk, and I've got a brother who's awesome on screen, and I have to show off Magic Bullet looks and all of its color correction stuff. Like, what if a kid presses a button and and movie genres happen? But you put together what you have, and you make something from it. And so when Hollywood comes calling, you just have this blue sky of like, I don't know what big budgets are. I don't know what we have. So maybe a plane crashes. Like maybe like
there's all these creatures.
Exactly. Like why creatures? Like so like I had this whole thing that was like a plane blowing up in the midair. Like the movie opened with like a plane explosion, and then a pilot enters frame on can't get their parachute open, and they get the parachute open, and it's this this whole like elaborate oneer as they're like falling into like hitting the desert ground, but then it's not it. They actually go through this like it's like a shaft or like a hatch. They bust through, and the shot keeps going. And as I'm saying it, it's actually cooler than I remember it being.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is not a bad start.
Yeah, actually no, it's not. But it's a very expensive start. And then they land, and they're stuck in this like underground warehouse thing. And my whole pitch was that like Acme has been shuttered, and like all their stuff is like Raiders of the Lost Ark-esque under this is in this like underground warehouse that is called Termite Terrace, which is named after the office building that Tex Avery and Chuck Jones and all those guys named their building, because it was a total shithole in the Warner Brothers lot where they would animate all of the Looney Tunes, and they called it Termite Terrace. So that was like the government code name for this location. And it was full of all these like Looney Tunes Easter eggs and inside jokes, and it was kind of like, how do I describe it? It was kind of like Portal 2 meets the Looney Tunes, but bad.
I was on board until you said, but bad.
No, that's how I pitched it. That was my downfall.
But the worst versions of what I'm saying.
So, my downfall was that So first thing I did was I drafted up I had this opportunity. So my agents were at the time, I had 8 agents at the time. It was like the head of motion picture literary, and then like another agent, and then a junior agent. And that junior agent ended up becoming my agent ultimately. But so I'm talking to, at the time, my 3 agents, and they're like, write something up, send it to us so we can see it, and we can kind of get you, like, we can help you hone it before we put you in the room, which is their nice way of saying, so you don't embarrass us.
Right.
Which is smart, because but as hard as they tried, nothing can prevent me from embarrassing someone, as the story will show. So I wrote up this like 1-page document, and the thing is, I had not ever written a full treatment or a pitch. I didn't know how much of the story to give away, because in my mind, like, one, I don't know where the story goes, and this is where I was at the time. I was like, I don't have time to write this whole damn movie, and then just like without even knowing if you're going to want it or not, which is like, it's such a noob way to think about coming into this business and pitching your material. I've since learned that you can generally figure out a rough structure and be able to talk about it in the room. And that most executives, if they're into an idea, they want to feel like they helped you build it. And so it's great if it's raw.
Totally.
I didn't know that at the time.
I've totally said at times. And then we go into the Act 2 madness, which I'm sure you can see what I'm saying there. And they're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. Exactly. And like, you were all working toward this whole turn, like into the break into Act 3. Like, this is where we're working toward. And maybe it's, it's all that vagueness that you're referring to. But like, it turns out like that's not super hard to like get on paper for yourself and pitch in a room and talk about in a room. I didn't know that. So I wrote this it was almost like a synopsis you would read on the back of a VHS tape. It ended with something like, with a so-and-so, so-and-so, and a Lalo Schifrin-like score, this is sure to be pure adventure. It wasn't that, but it was like that bad. It like ended on that. It was basically like the opening scene, and then kind of like general hijinks that would ensue, and which was a character, General Hijinks. He was the antagonist. No, I made that up. So dumb. And I turned in this, like, it's not even a whole page. It's like half a page. So I turned that in, and they were like, this is cute. They're going to want more of the story fleshed out. And I was like, okay. And I think I just finished the page. Like, I wrote another half page. And at the time, I had written one feature, and I had written it without any structure. I had kind of written it as from a standpoint of like, here's kind of generally where I think the movie goes. Here's what I think happens kind of in the middle. I'm just going to write it. And it didn't go great. And I had been using these short films and these like little mini series, web series things I was doing at my job at the time as like a way to learn get better at story, get better at structure, starting small and getting bigger. But even then I still wasn't, to me, like a beat sheet did not read as anything anyone would buy. That was the hard part for me of like going into these meetings with pitches, or going into like pitching anything for a long time, was like, sure, I could beat this thing out and I could give you that beat sheet on paper, or I could, read it to you, or kind of tell you, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. But if I had to give you just like the one page like beat sheet, it's just a bunch of like words, and none of the emotion is there, none of the compelling character moments are there, none of the intangibles are there. And great movies are made up of intangibles. And the alternate to that is to just tell the whole story to someone, and which so often just feels like their eyes are glazing over and they are tuning out big, large portions because you just won't stop talking, because you have to keep talking because it's a long story.
Yes, that's the hardest part, is when you see the eyes start to glaze a little bit and you're like, oh God, no.
And you're like, and then he dies, and then he's shot, and you just start changing your story in front of them. I should actually try that. But no, so like they kept working with me, and I still kept just turning in, like I had a bunch of scene ideas, action sequence ideas, but I didn't really have like a whole character arc. And so it was a really flawed idea. It was a fun concept, but it wasn't a story. And people kept telling me that, and I kept being like, screw you, we'll find the story. Like, we'll figure it out as we write it, which is, I mean, sure, that can happen, but unless you're J.J. Abrams, no one's going to buy a thing from you that you say is going to become a story, that you're going to work through it. Anyway, so it got to the point where they were like, my agents, God bless them, just threw their hands in the air. Were like, all right, you know what? We keep setting this meeting and resetting it. And I think they to themselves were like, this is the best it's going to get. Let's just send them in there. And I was still in Nashville at the time. And it was the meeting. It was one of those things where it was scheduled for, golly, it was like scheduled for the next morning or something. And they called and they were like, hey, he's got an opening right now. Can you do it right now? And I'm not going to say no. I'm like, yes, of course. I'm nobody. I will take this now. My wife had just gone out to like hang out with friends. And so it was me and my 2 kids at home, and like very young kids. And it was like maybe 6 o'clock Nashville time. Are you still there, by the way?
It's
just a callback.
Yeah, that was a great callback. That worked wonderfully.
Yeah, just a callback. But this is a hint of things to come. So it's 6 o'clock Nashville time, which is 2 hours ahead of L.A., so
this was a phone meeting.
This was a phone meeting. So it's 6 o'clock Nashville time. They have an opening. So I quickly just say so my kids are young enough to where they're going to bed at 7 normally now, and maybe the baby like around 6:30ish. So it's not that out of the way that I'm like, time to go to bed, but it's still 6 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, I put my kids to bed. They are not tired at all. And I get on the call, and I have a little bit of stuff written out, but I don't have like we talked about before, you can't write out everything that comes before Webster's dictionary defines movie as. So like we're kind of small talking, whatever. And he's got me on speakerphone because he's got another exec in the room, and she's gonna be listening in on this. And I'm like, great. So, and I just do this thing that I'm still getting better at, which is, I can't just dive into the idea. For some reason, I just don't feel like I've earned the right to. So I start explaining the process of how I got there. But it was like in The Office when Michael Scott knows he's got everybody's attention, so he tells every minute detail of the story. It was like that. So it was like, and then you told me that you wanted me to pitch something on Acme. And I was like, man, I love that. And I went home and I was writing in my notebook and thinking about, what does Acme really mean? And I was, looking stuff up, and I found this, and I was thinking, and by this point, they are like, they're done. They're ready to take a nap or move on. And I'm still not getting to the point. And I still have not gotten to the point when my kids come in the room, start getting up and coming in and needing something. And I'm like, hey, buddy, go to sleep right now. Go back to bed. And they're like, oh, is that? I was like, oh, it's my kids. Just trying to keep them in bed. And I realized it's like 4 o'clock LA time. And even then, it's still 6 o'clock Nashville time. I look like a monster. Like, who puts their kids to bed in the friggin' afternoon? So, like, I'm this dirtbag who's, like, locking his kids up in the basement, telling them to shut up while
pitching a family film.
Not even that. Not even pitching it yet. I'm telling them, like, my diary entry of the day I learned that I got a chance to pitch Acme. And lead exec, the guy, whatever the word would be, but like the one who had more, was higher up in the totem pole, who would kind of set the meeting, was like, hey, I'd say, like, can we pause this real quick? I'm going to call you right back. I just got to take something real quick. And I was like, yeah. And they hang up. A few minutes later, calls back, and it's the girl, it's the other exec who was on the line, and she was like, "Hey, he got pulled into a meeting, so it's just gonna be me for the rest of it. So so keep going. Don't let me stop you." And I know right then I'm like, okay, his time is very valuable, and I totally did not utilize it. Yeah. And I just spent the rest of it. I got and dived into the story, told her about it. She's like, "Yeah, it's really neat. That's really cool. Yeah, I really like the." And then she's just pointing out whatever she can find to be kind and sweet about. And God bless her for having to hear that whole story and still humor me. And then to top it off, I ended it by being like, "Oh, but I haven't told you like one of these really funny gags that I thought of that I really love." And she's like, which is a great way to set up a funny joke. And she kindly was, "Oh yeah, so let's hear it." And I go and I tell her this one funny joke that I'd thought of that apropos to nothing. And that was the last time I spoke to either of those executives, who were both very kind and gracious to give me their time. And that was my first pitch. And
oh, that was your first pitch?
That was my very first pitch ever.
Oh, that's painful.
It's thank you for saying it's painful, because every time I tell people like, "Oh, it was bad. My first pitch, I pitched this and it was bad." They're like, "Oh, I'm sure it wasn't that bad." And I'm like, you don't know. You weren't there.
Yeah. Like, especially because it's all compounded by the fact that this is all you've ever wanted to do in your entire life. And you're finally talking to a gatekeeper that could open the gate up and let you come in and do the only thing you've ever wanted to do. So it just makes it so much worse in the moment.
Wow. Yep. So, hey, I gotta go. I gotta just jump out this window real quick. Be right back. This isn't new, guys. This is what Ryan and I do every day, constantly on suicide watch for each other.
Yeah, pretty much.
But man, you hit the nail on the head. God.
Yeah, that's been with this round of stuff, because that definitely blocked me with my first round of stuff that I had, and my second round of stuff that I had a little bit ago.
Was that after Proximity? What was the first round?
After Proximity, yeah.
Yeah.
And then after Proximity, there was a healthy round of things. And then now after Ballistic, there's been a healthy round of things. But between then, it was just like stragglers here and there. Like, Ghost House, Action Month comes out and there's a few people. Ghost House and Chainsaw come out and there's a few people. Sentinel came out and there was a few people. So the only two times there was like full rounds of things was Proximity and now after Ballistic. But with Proximity, that was so much the thing of like, oh my God, I got to get on the train. I got to get on the train right now. And if they won't let me on, then I'm just a complete failure. And then, you told me a thing that I believe Stu said, that it's like, you're the train, not them.
Yeah. And I heard Booth talk about it in his podcast too. Like, that you're the train. That was mind blowing for me, and so validating and supportive of kind of what my instinct felt like, what I would rather do, which is just go in and say like, I'm making this. It's awesome.
Right.
Do you want to be involved? Because I'm right. It is awesome. Like, I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm not great, maybe not be great, but I'm pretty good enough to make things that some people like and that I like, most importantly, and I'm really excited to make. And then I provide opportunities for other people to work and do these things. And it's like, and if I do it right, then it's fulfilling for people other than just me. And it's not like yeah, I'm good, screw you. It's like I would love to like take this to a bigger place, but I need you to do that. And I'm going to do it anyway. So come aboard. And
yeah, and I think that thinking more than anything else for me is the key to just, you're pitching the thing and talking about the thing that you want to make, the thing that is you and a part of you and your voice, instead of just, like with my first round and like what you're talking about, just saying the movies that you think they want to make or that they're already making or that are currently popular, and they're smart enough to know that that's not the route to take. And so with these, it's just been, well, what do I want to make? And
it seems to be going well for you. I mean, not to like set up any kind of expectations from people that you are, signing any contracts at the moment, but like they're going better, needless to say, than like maybe the last round did. Or it's
definitely going better than it ever has before. But it's also like I've done enough of them to know that no matter how good it looks, doesn't mean anything. There's a better chance of nothing happening than something happening. There's such like a minuscule target to hit.
It drives my wife crazy how quickly I race to the finish line. I race to disappointment before anyone can get me there.
Yeah. It's how we stay sane though. It's just being like realistic more than anything else.
It is, because it's not dread. Like dread is putting your flag in the ground and saying, this is all there's going to be, or bad things are going to happen. And that is all that's going to happen. Like, it's 100% certain that either bad things will happen or nothing will happen. And that's not what this is. It's like you're right. It's just basically saying like, hey, none of this may pan out. And that needs to be okay. Like, I need to be able to find the fulfillment in what I do have, which is the process, which is the, all those keywords and stuff, which is not easy.
Up until the point to where you need the gatekeeper. And for me, it's just, planning for the best, preparing for the worst. That, old thing that's just true regardless. So it's like I'm moving forward and I'm working on ideas and pushing as hard as I possibly can, as if this is absolutely 100% about to happen, with the realization and the understanding that it probably isn't.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, as we start to wrap up, it might be good to talk about how we even got to that point. Because, I mean, we're both like, there's a toe in there and we're trying to get through that gate, but we're not quite through the gate yet. And for me, it's been like, especially with like Ballistic, it's definitely a different time frame now than it was with Proximity. I definitely know what you're talking about as far as then versus now, but there's still definitely a search for short films online. I know a couple of these
you've shown me that.
Yeah,
like,
a couple
you showed
of
me
these,
that just now with this.
and a couple of these the companies, which are large companies, not small, have a bunch of interns that their job is to comb the internet for short films and bring them to them. That's what they do on a daily basis. And somebody else was telling me, it's like, oh yeah, you need your short film to be 3 minutes, 5 minutes max, or nobody's going to watch it. And I was like, well, great. I'm about to release a 15+ minute short film. But, it turns out that that's not true either.
I don't think it's true. I've always maintained that like it needs to feel like 5 minutes, whether that's 15 minutes long, but it feels like 5.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It just needs to feel like 5.
Yeah, definitely like hooking someone in immediately with the confidence of, hey, I got you. I'm going to give you an experience. I'm going to tell you something is key, of course. But yeah, I don't think time relies on anything. But the one thing I have found just across the board is it does not matter how many views the short film gets at all. Zero matter in how many. The only reason, the only thing that has got me any attention ever, every single time without fail, has been a publication posting it. So getting a story done on it.
Like you were on Sci-Fi this last time.
This last time there was a bunch. There was like First Showing, Sci-Fi. With Sentinel, there was The Verge and Sci-Fi. Before with the Bloodtober stuff, Ghost House and whatever, there was like Variety and different places like that. Those have been the only reasons that these people have found me. Sentinel just had 2, but 2 very large places contact me, and it's because The Verge posted it. With this one, it was IO9 and First Showing.
IO9 is responsible for any success that I've had, like with my short films.
Yes.
It's always when IO9 picks it up, everybody else picks it up.
IO9
and they've
is
been
great.
so good to me over the years, and I have never actually had a conversation with anyone there.
No, me neither. God bless them.
Yes.
But yeah,
here's to you, IO9.
Yeah, here's to you. But it's just those things that is how in one instance, it was an actual executive that found it. In the other instances, it was an intern that found it and then showed it to the executive. But it's always been that. So it's been times where my short film had under 100,000 views at the time, and I was getting contacted. And then there's Ghost House that now has almost 2 million views, but all the contacts that I got from it happened right up front before it ever hit 200,000 views. So that's
so interesting.
Yeah, it's never been because they went viral or anything like that, which I think is a great testament to it just matters what work you're putting out there. And then the hard part is to try to get the gatekeepers of, publication to put something out there about you so the other gatekeepers can find out about you. It's just there's so many steps to try to get through.
Well, but here's the thing. Here, though, I will say this. The thing I learned that may be helpful in that I haven't been able to apply yet, but I hopefully will by the end of the year is with a short that I'm making soon, if that wasn't clear, is I learned this on the Kickstarter. For the Kickstarter for the Story Clock Notebook, which you can find out more at storyclock.co, I found a book by a guy named, I believe his name is Jamie Stonemeyer. I'm blanking. I think that's it. Jamie Stagmeyer might be his name, actually. Stonemeyer Games is his company. He's created a bunch of like tabletop board games through Kickstarter, and but more than anything, he has a blog all about just I think it's called Kickstarter Lessons, and it's the greatest resource alive. And even if you don't kickstart something, it's a really great tool for someone trying to promote themselves and trying to like get projects off the ground. But he has a book and a blog for Kickstarter lessons that I ate for breakfast leading up to our Kickstarter, and heavily influenced how we ran our Kickstarter. And one huge thing that he says was like, the day you launch or the day before you launch, whatever, like the day, have a bunch of emails prepped to friends and family, and don't just blind copy everybody. Like, try to custom tailor the emails like to each person. Just saying, hey, I made a short, or hey, I've got a Kickstarter. And his advice was like, hey, I've launched a Kickstarter project. Here's what it is. Even if you have no obligation to back it, but if you think of anybody who might think it's cool or it might be useful for, I would be so grateful if you could share it with those people. And thanks for your support over the years, or whatever, etc. And by starting the project off that way, you immediately get there are going to be people who back you or people who just share it with others, but them just sharing it with others, then you immediately are starting. You're not just putting it online and just waiting for people to come in. You're immediately getting the ball rolling and getting it spreading and moving. And then a thing that I learned is like, if your Kickstarter does take off, a thing that you start doing is saying to your backers, like, today, if you could just share it with one person, that's all you got to do today. Like, if today, I'll tell your backers, like, share this project with one person. Think about it. Like, how many people are going to, like, if just half those people share it with one person, depending on how many you have, like, that's a large amount of people that are going to be exposed to your project then. And where I'm going with this is, at the very end of the project, after you've, say the project was successful, usually like certain publications might pick up on it or talk about it or blog about it. They may not contact you or anything, might just feature it. You can then reach out to those people when you launch the product down the road and say, hey, it's coming. Here it is. Can I send you a copy of it or a version of it or whatever? We did that with No Film School. V. Renee reached out to us during the Kickstarter and feature the Story Clock Notebook on No Film School, which was huge for us. And then we were able to reach out to V like down the road when we actually launched the product and say like, hey, it's actually up. Just want to let you know. You don't have to write about it or anything, but I'd love to send you some of the products to get your take on it and opinion. And just thank you for all the support you've shown us. The point is, like, it's cool to reach out to people and say like, hey, no obligation to do anything, no actionable obligations on this email. I just wanted to share this with you. If you have anyone you'd want to share it with, share it. It'd be greatly appreciated. I'm a big fan, etc. There's nothing wrong with like sharing your work with others. And there is something wrong with feeling entitled to their attention and their response.
Yes,
but
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how I've gotten, I would say, 80% of any of the articles done on any of my films is by reaching out to the people and being like, hey, here's a thing that I have. With Ballistic, I would say 90% of them was because I reached out to the people being like, hey, I just did a thing. First showing, I reached out to them. Sci-Fi, a writer on Sci-Fi, I like his stuff. So I just reached out to him like, hey, I have this new short film. I'd love to send it your way. If you're interested, send me a DM. And he did. And so I sent it to him and he dug it and did an article on it. And I mean, the whole time he was like, hey, no promises. I'm not saying I'm going to write it, but I'll watch the film. And I'm like, hey, fair enough. I just want you to watch it. And that's pretty much how it went across the board. And for all the films, I had a PR buddy that helped me with Proximity, who put something out on like that Newswire deal that helped out a little bit, but really it was the stuff like that, the personal emails or tweets being like, hey, check this out if you want, don't if you don't. But I did a thing and you might dig it. That led to all that stuff. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. And it's definitely not the entitled like, hey, watch this and then share it. I see a lot of people doing that, and that is the best way to get someone not even to bother watching it.
Oh, 100%. I think it's got to be personalized, and that's why I would argue, if you're sending it to like journalists or sending it to like bloggers or writers or whatever, like pick the ones you legitimately read every day and love.
Yes.
Like, don't just blanket pick a name from like a list. Like I think you and I end up on these tweets that like these tweet storms that are like, someone found like a YouTube creators list and they've gotten to the bottom of the barrel and they're now sending them to us, and they're just tweets that say, hey, check out my new short, yada yada. And for some reason, you can tell that it was like, you're going to click on their profile and you're going to see at Corridor Digital, check out my new short, at Film Riot, check out my new short. Like it's going to be,
or the ones where they don't even single it out. They just be like, check out my new short, and then they reply
everybody.
like 10 different people. And it's like, come on.
The difference is you actually watch them. I just don't. But you're
the
also
only ones
better at that than anybody.
The only ones I don't watch are the ones where it's entitled, where it's like, hey, watch my short film and then share it. It's like, well, moving on. But if you tweet to me and you're like, hey, can you check this out? Yeah, of course. I'll definitely check it out. It's just, and that's how I approach people too. You know, anybody that I try to get to watch my stuff, I'm not assuming I'm asking them for the most precious thing they have, their time. And I'm not going to also ask them.
It's something I'm not even willing to give. Like, I'm not even willing to give them. If they were to send me something to watch, I can't promise I would take the time to watch it. I'm that, like, so I understand how huge of an ask it is to ask somebody to watch something that you made.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it's difficult. And then on top of that, you're hoping that they'll share it, which is one of the other most precious things that they've had and built over time, is a following of people that are waiting to see what they're going to post next, which is valuable to them. They don't want to be posting things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like to just be entitled to, like, you're going to watch this and then you're going to post it for me. Even if you don't mean it that way, you have to be so careful with how you phrase things so you don't turn people off to potentially doing that.
Yeah. It's hard, man. And
It is.
A lot of it is just like trusting your gut and not doing. And like we talked, the theme of this is like, don't just do what you think you're supposed to do. Like, that's not the right way to say it, but like, it's okay to question your inclination to like give people what you think they want to hear, or to do like what you think is the industry way of doing things. But the truth is, usually the right thing is going to be the thing that feels the most natural to you and who you are. And that doesn't mean it will lead to success, but success is not even guaranteed if you cheat and do it the whatever way. Like,
Yeah.
success is never guaranteed. You have to like lean on the principles of who you are and what got you where you are, and the process and journey and all those buzzwords, because that's all you really have at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. Like, that's something I'm always thinking about too, is like, I want to be able to look back and be proud of not only what I did, but how I did it. So that's always
Absolutely.
a huge thing in my head of, even when I'm just dealing with people or pitching something, it's just, you know, this is something that I'm going to be proud that I made, and the way that I did it. I'm not coming in here like this smarmy, oh, you need me. But you have to have confidence, sure, but at the same time, it's like, you know, be humble and honest.
Do you start meetings that way? Have you started a meeting that way? Just,
every time. That's I had a joke, but I'm not going to go with the joke that I had.
Come and get this. Yep. Yeah. Don't go with that joke.
I have
know
2
where it's
kids
going.
is all I'm saying.
Oh, good God. I have 3. So
my God, you animal.
You animal. I have 3.
I
and they're
always
in,
try to just have. Like,
I have 3, and they're in bed right now at noon. So
you're a monster. Are you going to pitch me a Looney Tunes movie?
I mean, that's generally what happens on our calls, right? I don't know why this tradition started.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Either. But yeah, just, you know, with all things, with just asking people to watch my stuff, pitching, I try to come in with as much like honesty and humility as possible, which is a hard balancing act because you also don't want to seem insecure either. You know, you definitely need to be confident and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. It's definitely a weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. All of this is a weird thing. The point. Thank you for having me on your podcast when the theme was the weirdest, like the stuff that we're not really good at, that is weird and feels weird and it's hard to talk about. But actually, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's just I've never heard
forum.
anybody talk about, because it, like, to use the same word over and over again, it is a weird sort of time frame to be in. You're in this definite odd balancing act, and a very scary one, because like I said, the thing you've always wanted is right in front of you, but you're on the wire trying to keep yourself up and not fall down, and nobody ever talks about that, I think, because of the insecurities that come along with this. But I think it's something really helpful for other people who are maybe in our position or just before our position to hear and know either you're not alone or this is what's coming.
And the truth is, like, I think that we all know, as you see, and this is just what all great stories are about, is the thing that we really need is just on the other side of the death of the thing we think we need.
My God,
and
so profound.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mind blown.
Come and get it. You need this. I mean, I'm convinced, I don't know, I believe that, like, some of us may not be meant for the thing that we've always dreamed of doing, or the version of it that we have in our heads.
Yeah.
And that is such a wonderful thing, because it just means that, like, I mean, yeah, if I got everything I wanted, I would be miserable, and I'm very thankful that I have not. And I'm excited to see what it is exactly that is in store for me, like what it is that I actually am really, really good at if it's not this, because I assume that'll just be even more fun than this is.
Well, that's a great place to end on. with a little
Yeah, dude. What is
little
it? 3
wisdom
hours?
from Whirly's Corner.
Whirly's Corner. Na 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 na. What is that theme? I don't know what that theme is.
That's your theme.
That's the theme, is me being like, me just guessing what themes I'm humming. Golly.
So the theme's different every week. It's just a bad version of a theme you do like.
And I break down midway. I stop midway through and I'm like,
You still there?
That's something. Yeah, exactly. You still there? Oh, man.
So that's it for today. If you want to connect with Seth online or just see some more of his work, which he has tons of really great stuff online, jump over to the episode page. We've got all those links in there for you. You can also find me online at twitter.com/Ryan_Connolly. And if you dug the episode of the podcast as a whole, do me a favor, jump over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a comment. That stuff really does help us out. But until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.